And we're live. Welcome back to the podcast, Christian. Well, the new podcast. You were on the first Eternal Expansion, and now I get to have you on Between Portals, which is so fun. That we're
Thanks
here
for
again
having me.
in like a different way.
Exciting.
Yeah. So, Christian is a quantum hypnosis, and I will let you dive into how do I say guide or
I say quantum hypnotist
hypnotist
and embodiment coach. So, I think my my email signature has a lot of titles on it, but I just keep it simple there. But yeah, so quantum hypnosis. There's original definitions like by Dolores Cannon, the person who pioneered the modality, and I just came up with the explanation that resonates with me the most because I lose people on the definition, the way she
it's
explains it, because
complicated.
it
Yeah.
comes from a different place. Like, she went there with people. And if you're not familiar with Dolores Cannon's work, she is the original, she created quantum hypnosis. She started with past life regression, and then she ended up calling it quantum hypnosis because of the places she would take her clients. Eventually became known for her work with Nostradamus, and then she worked with people who were seeking alternative treatments to their cancers. So I
Wow.
always said,
I didn't know that
yeah,
part.
yeah, I will. So as the depth in which I dove into her work equated to what I could find in audio, because at this point in my life was not reading as much. So this is what I found through her audio recordings, and it's fascinating.
Yeah.
Um, so, and whenever I say quantum hypnosis, people get really lost with the quantum word of it. And I had this conversation with my partner, which he's like, I love that he's such I'm so woo and on this other spectrum, and he's on the opposite side. He's very logical, sciencey, seeing is believing type facts person. And we can have these conversations, and I get a lot out of it. Like, I'm like, oh, I can actually explain it this different way that other people can understand. Because I tend to not attract people who I feel like I attract more people who are curious into spirituality than fully into it. So I feel like I'm like a living
Like a
duality.
bridge. Yeah. Like
Like,
you're kind
yeah,
of like, just dip your
yes,
toes in. It's not scary. Like, like a
yeah.
little bit of like doesn't scare them out to be like, hey, do you believe in aliens and there's other planets and quantum and all this stuff? And people are like,
Yes,
whoa.
it goes really
That's
deep.
like
And I
me.
can,
And then
yes,
yeah.
yes, yes. And I love it.
Right.
It's like I love listening to people who can speak that language, but
Yeah.
like sometimes my brain can't wrap around how
It,
deep the depth of it. So, the way I'll explain quantum is if you Google it and you find the definition of quantum, it means the most basic form, but in the scientific definition, it's in reference to the atom.
mhm.
So if you think of it as the most basic form, well, if you attach it to the word hypnosis, well, where am I taking people in the hypnotic state? There's brainwave states, there's alpha, beta, and then if you go lower, there's theta right before you fall asleep, where you're still talking, you can still talk to people, you're still conscious, and that's below the level of all the programming, the thoughts, the anxieties, your mom or dad's voices, society's voice who told you what to be, all the limiting beliefs. And below that is your clarity, your clearest messages. I want to say, if you want to get it into the woo, I'm like, this is where your soul speaks to you. So
Mm. Yeah. It's like cut through the crap, and this is like the most like clear way of like you communicating to you kind of thing. Like it's like your clearest voice is what it feels like.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which I had discovered Dolores Cannon, I don't know, maybe like not 2 years ago. It was like not at the beginning of all of this journey for me, but like the first time I started listening to her audiobooks, and then I didn't even know like, yeah, like I had no idea what quantum hypnosis was or even what that meant. And then also like I was just in general confused about like hypnosis when like you think about like people on stage and they're like making you do things and stuff. And then when you like listen to like her description and like what she was doing and then what people were saying, I was like, holy shit, like this is way different than what I ever like what I thought it was going to be, was how my experience was. And she had said, like, I remember this one point where I was like listening to her audiobook and I was like I was in a bus going going back down to like Kathmandu when I was in Nepal. And I was like listening and I was like doing my own stuff, but like, you know, doing my spiritual stuff, like why I'm in Nepal. And then she literally says in the book, like, where we used to have to go to all these remote places and remote teachers and all these, mystery schools and hidden things is now wildly like knowledge where we can Google things and find teachers online and do these hypnosises. She's like, it's not like you need to go to Nepal to find these things. And I felt so called out, but also I'm like, this is like such synchronistic where I'm like listening to this book. She's telling me that you don't have to go like literally to Nepal. I'm in Nepal. And I'm like having this moment to be like, oh my God, this is insane. But that was like my first experience with like her and then listening to her work. And ever since I started listening to her audios, and different books, I was like, I have to do this. Like, I need a session. And then when I got back to the States, it was just always really difficult for me to find somebody. And it never really aligned. And I thought about it like a few weeks ago.
I think
again.
I'm losing connection.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Oh, you like, yeah, like it lagged a little bit. I don't know what happened.
Sometimes it does lag on both sides, but recording should be fine. So if I blurt out, you can let me know, or you could just be like, what was that again? But I was like,
you're blurring right now, but I can hear you.
Perfect. It should be fine.
Awesome.
Yeah, but it was like this moment in time where I was like, I felt like I just needed to have a quantum hypnosis session, even though I had really no idea like what I was going to get into. And I don't know. I attempted and I looked at different people, different dates. Nothing matched up. Nothing worked. And I was like, I'm not going to push this. And then I thought about it again like a few weeks ago. And then like you had popped up being able to do this. So this was like the synchronistic of like, you're like, hey, do you want to have a session? I was like, oh my God, I've literally been putting this in the ether for like a year since I've been back. And then again, once I was starting to dive deeper into my own stuff recently, I was like, damn, I think a session would be really helpful. And then you were just like slid into my DMs and you're like, hey, do you want to do this? And I was like, oh my God, this is like so perfect. So yeah, I just wanted to provide a little bit of my experience with what quantum hypnosis is, how I found it, and then I didn't really know what it was going to be like even when we had this session. I had kind of an idea. I've had obviously a lot of other types of sessions, but this was wildly different than other things that I've experienced.
It's very different from a lot. Like it's different from you went through a lot of things there, and you started with like the stereotypical thoughts on what hypnosis is, what you see on TV, and even traditional like clinical hypnosis doesn't even look like that. Like you can't just hypnotize somebody and overcome their free will. Like you can't hypnotize somebody who doesn't want to be hypnotized. And like they call it hypnosis and it's like it's not really hypnotizing. Like, I really don't even see it that way. It's like, I feel like when I was in session with you, I just talked to you, and through guided meditation, you were just falling asleep more and more deeper, or like not even falling asleep, but going deeper and deeper and deeper into a different state of mind. So like, I don't know. I like
Yeah.
the energy of what mainstream media like portrays hypnosis doesn't resonate with me. So
Yeah. I have to agree. It feels like it almost felt like you're just kind of like clearing away the clutter, or like the more of like our thinking brain, or like our logical brain, all of like the scattered thoughts that just like sometimes bombard us throughout the day. And it almost felt like I was like floating into different, because at first, as we first go in, I got to go to all these different places where you're like, take me to a memory. And that was a wild experience, because I felt like I didn't realize how much, like, how many emotions, and how visceral, like feelings, like I felt more than I was able to describe, and I saw more than what I was able to describe. So as I was like listening to it back, I like really appreciated how much like space that you took in between. You're like, okay, go somewhere. And then it was like silence. And then you're like, where are
mhm.
you now? And then I remember, I remember like going through so much within that moment of like seeing so many things or feeling so much. And then you bringing me back to like, okay, what is it? What is it that's going on? But I didn't realize, even listening back, I didn't realize like how much emotional charge that I had in all of those places. Like I was crying, and then I was laughing, and I was having all of these physical reactions that I was like literally living these things or remembering these things like actual memories, which they are. But it was just, I don't know, I was just a little bit shocked to be like, wow, you felt a lot when I like went those places.
I love that. I loved your hypnosis, by the way. It's like your reactions, like you're seeing a whole different world and experience something that I can't necessarily see. Sometimes I can see certain things that people are describing. I was like, my imagination goes with it, and I was like, okay, I see something, and maybe we're seeing the same thing, but and then you're laying there and you have your reactions, and I was just like, wow. And I love that you pointed out that I have like me holding space for you in that moment. Like, I've done hypnosis on myself. I've had people facilitate for me. I've done self hypnosis, and I understand the time that's required to process what is even this experience I'm having, and everybody has a different one. Like,
Yeah.
I always say to my client, I have no idea what's going to happen. I really don't. Like, it's always a surprise. Like, everybody's subconscious is their own. They're unique. They're all nuanced to themselves. But you I I think my favorite one, I loved all of them, but my favorite one was your dolphin one. That one was
Oh,
really,
yeah. And
yeah.
I want to like preface before we dive into that of like the structure of how you did things real quick for your session specifically. Because before we even got into hypnosis, we had the session, we had a pre-session, like a consult, which was like an hour long of like, okay, what do you want to dive into? What's your theme? What are questions? So I got to create like a list of like 10 questions to ask, or for her to ask me when I was in that state. And then I got to set an intention for the whole hypnosis of like really of the broad, like, this is what I want to dive into in general, which kind of like summed up the 10 questions, kind of. And then we went into hypnosis, which was like a 3 hour. You usually do 2 to 3 hour sessions, but I, of course, just socked all of that up, and I was 3 hours. I was so chatty. Um,
Naturally.
naturally, yeah, nobody's surprised there. And then, so then you took me into the hypnosis. So that's a whole state. And then I got to visit memories. and this is where I'm describing to you right now that I had these like emotions and feelings, and I got to like see these different planets or different parts of me that have existed before or existing now. And then after that, then she talked to my higher self, and I got to answer these questions. So just to give like a map view of like the process of things for who's listening. But yeah, the dolphin, and there was actually some, because when I came out of the hypnosis, I remembered a lot, but it was almost that like I remembered more of like the feelings, or it was just like, whoa. And then to be honest, like a lot of it I kind of blacked out for. I didn't really have a lot of like immediate memory of what the session. It was like I got off the call and I was like, what just happened, you know? And then when
That's very common.
yeah. And then when I like re-listened to it, I was like, shit, I don't even remember me going to that place. Like I like completely forgot about like the forest place that I went to. And then I like Googled one of the planets that I had mentioned, and like I Googled that and I was like, oh my God, it's an actual planet. And then it was attached to this other planet. So we could talk about that later. But yeah, for the dolphin one was that was really interesting, because like it was, again, at first was like the feeling.
What was
I
the
didn't
last
really
thing you said? Because it
oh, did it blur
it
out?
yeah.
Oh, okay. I talked about like the planet that I had mentioned when I was like the octopus tree, or was it that the octopus tree? No. Yeah. That was associated with the dolphin. So basically I described
Was the
to you
dolphins in the octopus tree? Or no, the
it,
octopus tree was connected with the dolphin?
yes. So
Okay, okay.
when I was a dolphin, people are gonna be like, "What the fuck?" When-
Yeah. Yes.
this sounds
But it was
so
so
nuts.
good. I know
I know.
everybody's gonna hear this and be like,
Everyone's gonna be
what the
like,
fuck are
"What?"
they talking
Okay,
about?
let me see if I could explain this, because even when I was listening back to it, I was like, and I even said, like, logically, we're not gonna be able to understand this. But okay, so to back up, I was what I called, like, I was like an octopus being, and I was like squishy and I couldn't figure out what I was. And then after the session, when I was like walking in the park, I was like, whoa, that's kind of like a tree. So I was this like living, breathing, like octopus tree that's squishy and jelly, and I'm like living on this planet, right? So that's who I was. I was on a planet called Tara. And then as me being this
Oh,
tree,
Tara was a real planet.
yes. Yes,
Oh,
I
shit.
Googled it. Wait, because I was like, because I want to be like, you know, so you want to like validate yourself to be like, all right, what is this?
Yeah,
Hold
you
on,
have
let
to
me
Google
read to
it.
you. Yes. I'm like, and this is why I was saying, like, even with Dolores, she was like, literally, you have Google and you have like all this information where like you didn't have that at a time. So, okay, this is what was really trippy. So this is the image that I saw where it was like, let me bring this. It's like, can you see it at all? It's like Earth.
You're it
Is
was
it?
it, it was lagging again.
Oh,
Oh, oh, there's 3 planets and one
yeah.
is Tara
So
and
it's like
one's
Earth
Gaia.
is 3D, Tara is 5D, and then Gaia is 7D, which I have never
What the
heard
heck?
5D be described as Tara.
A planet,
Um, yeah.
right?
And so it says, okay, so via ascensionglossary.com. Oh
Of
my gosh, I
course.
just crack myself up sometimes. But we're going with it. Okay. The Earth originally came from Tara, which was a planet in the second harmonic universe that exploded and then imploded into a black hole. Some of the fragments
It's
were pulled into the lower
lagging again.
dimensions. Oh, I wonder why
Sorry. Just
I
because
want
we're talking about 3D, 5D, and 7D.
literally if I break up, like the recording should still be able, like
Oh, do
once
you
it
want me to not
uploads.
talk and like
Well,
when you
well, No, it's still tell me, because then I want to be able to be
Okay.
like, yeah. So then that way you can tell me. But I'm saying that like the overall, it should be able.
Okay.
The recording should be safe.
Okay.
Okay. So what was it? What was I saying? Yeah, Tara is a planet. So basically, 3D Earth is called Earth, or Tara. 5D Earth is called Tara, and then 7D Earth is called Gaia. And then different ET races and extra dimensionals may call these future Earths by different names based on their language. And so it was saying that basically Tara is like a future Earth. And then
Oh.
I was like reading, and then it says Tara and Tiamat, because then I said, you asked me what race am I? And I said like Tahara or something.
Yeah, something
And
like that.
yeah, and there's a sister planet called Tiamat. And then, and this is where things are getting kind of wild, because then I click on Tiamat, and then the destruction and capture of Tiamat's consciousness body is what led to the utter destruction of the white solar queens, who are the embodiments of the triple solar feminine ascended masters, splitting apart the Christos Sophia. As the solar female principle descended into lunar consciousness forms of sexual misery, which made ascension and leaving time matrix impossible. So it basically talks about how, oh wait, this part is also what was like, oh, the main technology weapon used to uphold the Dark Mother networks was an artificially generated galactic.
It's blurbing.
Oh, is it blurring again? No, I'm talking about too much of higher consciousness stuff. But no.
Yes.
Basically, the Tiamat was basically like now like talking about Dark Mother and Goddess, and how this whole, basically when it imploded. So it says to keep the pain hidden and the female enslaved, the controllers kept excess war and misogyny circulated in the previous areas of the Eden and the different areas. So basically, like when this like, I don't fully understand it, to be honest, but like when
I
this
don't
like
either.
imploded, or like, and I have to explore this more because I'm just scratching the surface of this, but it's talking about like the Dark Mother and these goddesses and the female embodiment, and getting back into like this the female power, which this was like basically shattered when this was destroyed. And I'm literally in the process of like that that part for myself. Like I'm like reading a book on womb stuff, and diving into the Dark Mother and all that kind of stuff. So when I was like reading this after listening, I was just like, the chances of this are I'm like piecing together these synchronicities, and I was like, holy shit, like this is all kind of like overlapping, which everything does ultimately.
I do want to add something to that. I don't know anything about galactic history and stuff like that. Like everything that you explained, I think it's like fascinating to listen to, and I find that in my journey, I get interested in things when I'm meant to listen to it. So like now, the history of what's going on now politically, and knowing our history in our human lives is I'm finally interested in it. I never was interested in that before. So I feel like one day in the future I'm finally gonna grasp everything that
Right.
people teach about galactic history. It just doesn't stick in my brain. But I do want to say that when you're talking about like you're speaking to feminine and the feminine energy, the feminine rising right now.
Yeah.
And that is the season of what's going on in the planet right now. And I was having this thought the other day because I was listening to this podcast, and this life coach who I really admire, she had 3 cis het white men on her podcast. Not white, they weren't all white, but they were all like straight men. And they were talking about their experiences with the patriarchy in like such a open, vulnerable way, like how the patriarchy has wounded them. And then like my mind went to like, oh, this like totally makes sense. Like the feminine right now, the feminine's rising right now. We're stepping into our power so that as we rise, the masculine has to follow us. The nature has its balance. It will balance each other, like itself out. And when people always, like, when I know women or um hetero women that like are interested in male partners, they get worried about like their male partners not healing fast enough, not healing with them. I'm like, don't worry, it's going to happen, but we have to heal ourselves first. The men will follow. And I was like, wow, that's like insane. Like,
Yeah.
just trust that this is the way it's supposed to look.
Yeah. And it's funny because I have in the last few months like felt like an unweaving of beliefs within myself of like these female male dynamics, what I want, what I thought I want, like what I thought I believed in and what now I believe in. It's like if you would have asked me like not even 5 years ago, I'd be like, no way. And now it's kind of like realizing those energies within ourselves of like even creating a really strong masculine structure within ourselves as well as the feminine. And then, yeah, it's, I think, something that's been out of balance for so long. And I think we were taught to be like, oh, it's the man's fault. Like they're fucking everything up. And it like pushed us into the masculine of like, I can do it better. I can be a better man. And then it's like, it's totally brings us out of our actual uh, embodiment and like power within being a woman. Because you're like, no, we shouldn't be doing
Yes.
those things. And
Well, we're
then,
matching them on a patriarchal energy.
yes,
And
it's
also, I
like,
do want to say that the reason why the men are having a hard time following, like, matching our energy of healing at our pace is because men benefit from the patriarchy the most. So, like, if we live in a system in society that you benefit from the most, why do you need to change? So women have to change first. We have to come into our power first. And then men will follow suit because they're forced to follow us to match that energy. We can't have it too lopsided, too balanced, misbalanced, or what's the word? Unbalanced.
yeah, yeah, right. It
Yeah.
has to, it eventually comes back into play. And I think that like naturally, as you said, like as that feminine rises, I think it gives space and also like, oh shit, like then the men are just like, well, I want to rise into that. And then I think finally now we're having more of this understanding, both female and male perspective of like, wait a minute, this structure that was created for us is not working for either side. Like it's fucking up the men just as much as it is the women too. So it's kind of like I see this a lot in even relationships that I see like online or things that I'd want just different examples of what this embodiment is in different relationships and then seeing it play out differently. Then I'm like, oh, that makes way more sense, or that is more beneficial for both parties when they're both in their own really strong energies. Like you're playing to your own strengths, which I think is part of the balance of the world starting to, you know, get back together. I think we have a long way, obviously, but it's nice to see
Oh,
people
yeah.
starting to like talk about it and have those men have that perspective too. Because I'm seeing like more of that even when I'm flipping online of like people like talking about yeah, how the patriarchy has fucked them up too and how they're like, no more. But
I mean, we have a long way, but I think when I look back on my journey, it's been like a 3-year journey since my awakening and my involvement. The difference between who I was then and now is astounding. Like,
yeah.
nervous system wise, like the sense of peace I have now, despite what the world looks like or what you see on mainstream media. It's like, I think if I think it's gonna be exponential growth. into that area. Even though it feels like it's a long time, it might feel long in our human eyes, but it's happening faster than we think.
Yeah. And I think that's also when we get like, so much change, da da da, like we feel that collective nervous system of just like, wait a minute, like we get scared of the change, but you're like, wait a minute, we don't like what's here, so we might as well just embrace whatever change is coming.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. But yeah, that it was cool to see like those two worlds. Like I didn't even bring up any of that in my hypnosis session. That wasn't
Oh,
really a
like for
focus.
the intentions and the questions.
Yeah,
That's
like that
what
wasn't a
wanted to come
focus.
through.
Like, well,
Yeah.
I mean, maybe. I guess in a side card, I guess, because the focus was love and money. So I guess it could be around love. And
Mm-hmm.
and then love in turn is like the love and balance within yourself and then other people. So I can see now how that kind of plays in. But even during session, it wasn't necessarily just specific to that. It was like through me researching the planet of what I had said. And then it like then talked about the womb. And I was like, I literally just started reading a book called Womb Awakening. And I've never been interested in any of this kind of stuff ever. Like it's always been, I don't know, not in the
I love
yeah.
I love when we honor where our interests lie when it happens. Like we're meant to care about these things when we care about them. I think
Yeah.
that's something to honor. And then as for the multi-dimensionality aspect of self-love, that's exactly what you experience. Like when you ask a question about love, I find that knowing that there are many pieces of you and you're just not this human body is a part of that journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And that even like correlates to what it's like basically so after the part where like you like were just talking to my higher self or true self or soul self, whatever you want to identify it as, listening to that was very it was very weird because it was like, okay, this is my voice, but it doesn't sound like me. The cadence isn't me. Like it just felt like I'm like, who is this?
I
Like I haven't
love that
had
you
that
pointed
much.
that out.
I mean, you hear your own messages from your own mind, and I
Yeah.
do different stuff like that, but hearing it play out like this felt such a weird sensation. And she had talked about, I'm not even going to say it was me, like she had talked about how we in search, and I've focused on this especially in a huge part of my early 20s of like, who am I and what's my purpose and who am I to the world, who am I to myself? And I felt like I really tried to like identify exactly specifically what that is. And then she goes like, she basically was just like, you're all of these things in all of these aspects with all of these energies, and we're showing you all of this where like you're just focusing in this pinpoint of like just in this little blip of who you are. And it's fun to play within those like identities and those structures and like playing that character and stuff, but then to also know like you're never going to get the answer of like, who am I, because like you're you're just like so much more than that. So like that was really an interesting perspective
It's
that like
kind of a loaded question, right? You're like,
yeah.
who am I? I'm like, well, where do you want to go with it?
Right. Like what, yeah, how far do you want to go into this? Yeah. Ah, so true. Do you find that like in your hypnosis sessions, like people react similarly, like, or are they just as emotional as I were, or like do you sense like some themes or common reactions or common places people go yet within the sessions that you've had?
I want to say about like 80% of my sessions, somebody finds some self like floating in outer space, always. And I'm like, oh, there's that space thing again. It could come in different colors. And everybody's had this feeling. And I think that happened to you too in the beginning, right? Were you
Yeah.
floating in space?
Yeah.
And everybody feels whatever that emotion is, but a lot of people have said this feels like home. They miss it and they're crying. And I was like, oh my God. And for me, when I listened to that, I was like, and it's funny that you brought that up because I was posting about universal oneness in my stories, like that feeling when you go to the space. You could be doing hypnosis, you could be doing breathwork, you could be doing ayahuasca or psilocybin. People find this space regardless. Like you don't need like any aid.
Yeah.
And and they come to this, everybody has that same experience. They go to this space in the cosmos or whatever in their mind. I feel like it's connected, and they have this sense of oneness or feeling like home. They miss this. They like being a human in this lifetime is so hard.
Yeah.
And I feel like I find it really lovely that even though our conscious moments are very hard, it can be painful sometimes, that when we go into our subconscious space, that we could find that deep connection, that feeling belonging, that feeling of peace, or whatever that feeling. Love is another one. Um, and I think, how beautiful is that when our soul takes us to that place to help us remember that that is a feeling that is within us,
Yeah.
and and to help us remember it when we allow ourselves to try something different, try something scary, because hypnosis does sound scary. Like going into the subconscious sounds scary for many people. And to just be curious and find that these feel like, I love that when you described your session, it was a body feeling.
Hmm.
and like, it goes back to when you think about your logical mind and your conscious programming and all the worries and fears and stuff like that, but when you allow yourself the space to go into these spaces, that that what is true. Like, you go to your conscious mind, has the program, all the worries and all the fears and anxieties. But underneath that, there's this like universal felt truth that I belong. I am one with everybody. I'm connected. I am love. Like, you're not, I feel love. No, I am love. You know what I mean? So it's really fast. Like, I
Yeah.
love
Okay.
it. I just love all of it.
Yeah, obviously you can hear it through your voice. But like I could speak to like two things that you had said about like the fear of like what am I going to find in the subconscious? And then also I guess let's dive into that cuz it's something, yeah, not everybody is like uh as willingly to open themselves up to themselves, let alone another person, of like you being a facilitator. And it can feel very scary because it's like, what am I going to find? And we have this like collectively and subconsciously of like this darkness that we're going to find that like we can't share with anybody. Like that it's like the step kid that you're trying to shove in the closet, like get out, like it's just the part of you that you're trying to sever from yourself. And like that part, I think, is such a visceral fear of like, what am I going to find? What are other people going to find? What am I going to expose? And then we have that in our societies too, of just like that in itself, like things just kind of shoved off to the wayside of not wanting to look. And I think that's where a lot of us don't necessarily start to change or want to change because like we don't want to look at those parts that like we don't want to see. And like that's what I think this session really helped kind of shed more of that like actual light, because it's just like it's not even, there's no harm in like it's there because you're just not choosing to look. Like it's just, if once you look at it, once you give light to it, and once you're like, oh, okay, that was an experience, or that's happening in the world right now, let's look at it and then bring it in. And then it's like it starts that integrative process. And I know that like this has been something that I've been working with myself in the last recent stint, however long. When you get into like the spirituality, sometimes like all you want to do is this outside stuff, and you I was really interested in all the upper, like what you said, you didn't really have any interest in the galactic stuff and, the past lives
Yeah.
and all the fun stuff, but it was like not the shadow work stuff. And so this session really helped me go into those different areas that I was also still avoiding. And that's even what my higher self had spoke about, where she's like, she just needs to look at it and then it'll be fine. But we get so scared about that when it's not really scary at all. Even in the darkness, that was the other piece where you said people tend to be in space. And I initially, like, that was where we first started, where I was like in this like almost web of things. Like it wasn't a body, I wasn't a form, I wasn't anything. I was like it almost felt like these neural kind of like pathways, or like when you look at like when you look at the brain, these like the neurons and stuff, that's kind of what it visually felt like. And then there was like a light in the distance, but we were like all connected. And I cried. I was so overwhelmed where I was like, I don't feel like this often, and I try to feel like this. And so that's interesting that people find that very like that's a common thing where people are brought back to like that essence of yourself.
I love that you pointed that feeling out, that you were formless, and that I remember your higher self saying that you were always searching for this feeling. And I was like, wow, like we're actually connected and we just kind of forgot. I think we're just remembering what that felt like.
Yeah, literally. And I think this is going to probably sound a little bit weird, but if you know how you have these experiences, or you have an experience, like for me, when I first did like psychedelics, when I first did a huge trip, and I kind of grasped this essence of like just so like connected and loved and just in awe, and you just felt like, oh, this whole human experience is like, I was just in bliss, like watching everything. And when you're at this point where you're like, oh my God, this is just my heart's gonna burst because I feel like this so much. When you're in that and then you get out of that and then you're in day-to-day life, I can access that much easier now because I had that set experience. So now when I'm like sitting in the park, I can easierly like access that state where I'm just like, bursting at the heart. And now that I feel like I had this hypnosis experience, so just talking about the experience of like accessing the emotion. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah. Okay, cool. This is gonna sound like one of those commercials. But yeah, it was like, now I feel like the hypnosis is able to do that for me too, where it's just like, now I have a core memory of like what it was like to be in different forms, of being formless, of being in space, of being in pure love, of being in the water and on the desert, and all these different things where it's like being like who am I question, or feeling like, I don't know. It seems so much bigger to where now that I can connect back to those memories of myself to like this lifetime. So it feels,
I
what I'm trying to say?
I love all of that. And no. I totally understand what you're trying to describe. Like yes. No. I'm gonna talk about it.
Okay.
You're like,
just shut me up if I'm rambling too much.
No. I love it because I love it's like I can feel like what you're experiencing, because you are actually accessing it right now, what you experienced in hypnosis. And when I tell my clients, is anything you experience in hypnosis, your brain doesn't know the difference between reality, whatever that means here in this space, in this conversation with you, but conscious, physical, like life, versus our subconscious when we dream. Our brains don't know the difference. In fact, if you do get into dream work, you can actually do a lot of work in dream work. I've done some dream work like by accident. Like I'll find myself in situations where, like, say as an example, like one time I was fighting a ghost, and I have like this fear of ghosts, right? Before, like things that I can't see. Like you watch a lot of like scary movies and people are fighting ghosts. It's very scary. I was actually fighting this ghost back. So now I don't really have a fear of ghosts. But it goes back to the work you're doing with your neural reprogramming.
Yeah.
Having that experience teaches your body and your brain, your nervous system, that I'm actually really safe. I have access to these feelings, these spaces of safety. We're inherently safe, but we're these souls now in this lifetime manifested as humans going through really tough things. And like I just think it's really beautiful that we chose to take ourselves from the ether, from those beautiful places that we felt like home in, and come in here into this freaking chaotic soup of a mess of like human life, whatever the hell is going on these days.
Yeah.
And evolve the energy through our human experiences. And when we get courageous and curious, and just follow our intuition, like how you decided to, like, there's something about this quantum hypnosis I want to try, like, that you often just get surprised when you look into the dark, shadowy bits. Like it makes me wonder, where does that even come from? Like, I know that, like, did it come from media? Did it come from marketing to be scared of ourselves? Like,
I
to
think so.
that disconnect?
Yeah.
Or I'm gonna like go off on a little side tangent, but my teacher in quantum hypnosis, her name's Monet. She's from the Starseed Awakening podcast. And she goes through galactic history. Her whole podcast is galactic history. And I know that from her history is that somehow some kind of virus, or maybe it didn't come from her podcast, but I know this isn't the history. A virus hit, like some kind of virus hit humans, and that's when the disconnection, the fears, the anxieties came through. We didn't start off like this when while we were evolving. And this virus, like, I don't know, some kind of alien virus came in and disconnected us from ourselves.
Wow.
And then the GFL, if you want to go that way, the Galactic Federation, was like, well, our law, our rule is not to interfere with human free will. Let's see where this goes. And I feel like all of this is by design. Like, for whatever reason, this weird virus or whatever devolved humans from their path. Devolved. I just because I don't have the words. I don't even like that word. But we found ourselves in this path where negative energies are coming through, the fears, anxieties, and all the things, and then you see, and it manifests bigger into like human atrocities and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I feel like the world is in such chaos, but I think it's that shadow aspect of human life is there for us to face so that we can step up and be better humans, evolve into that love. Like, it's like I don't have the words for this, but it's just like all coming to me right now. But it's like when polarity meets each other, there always is another side to it that will balance it out. The more human atrocities there are, unfortunately, this sounds terrible, the more people will rise up and meet it with love, I feel. It's where we're at. I don't know why I went that way, but I did.
No, it's gotta go that way. And that's like, come on, these are where my conversations go. You're like, how do we get there? No, it's true though, because like it's difficult when we're like in it and talking about it to be like, oh, this is helping us, even though it's like seems so backwards. But it's like when you take even what you did in our hypnosis, where I was actively feeling like I was dying. And you were like, if you don't want to feel this, do you want to rise above and view it from below? And when I did that, I was able to have like this much bigger picture of like what was happening and why. And then, that was the dolphin. I was shot from, I was a dolphin, I got killed. And I remember, like I said, that it was like my right side. And half of my group was being captured. And then my essence of my dolphinness was going up to that octopus tree. And so that's how
Yeah.
I was.
Oh yeah,
That's
where
where
now I
see,
remember
it's
how
all
it
just
went.
it all gets connected. Like we forgot about the dolphin at the beginning, but that's where like the essence went up to the tree, and then as me being this octopus tree, because that's the only thing that I can describe to what it looks like. It's not an official name, but that's what it is. Where it was like the essence of the dolphin then adds everything that dolphin learned, added to the knowledge of this tree, and then fed the earth of this planet, and then grew the planet. Like it grew that other part of me, even though I had to die and go through all these different things. So when I view like what's happening in the world or whatever, when we're seeing all these things happen, and we can feel like, how can you be neutral about any of this stuff, because we're physically in the physical experiencing it. But when we zoom up and then try to have a more neutral, broader perspective of it, of like, okay, why this is happening for humanity in itself, or what is it teaching us collectively, or how can we rise and meet with more love when we see more hate and all these things. And it is this I mean, it's painful, but it's like this really
Like you
incredible
felt
way that
that
we grow,
harpoon in your side, like
I did.
when you're hypnosis. I was like, oh no, what's going on? That sounds really scary. I was scared for you. I was like, I mean, I didn't show it, but I was just like, oh no.
Yeah. And it's funny because that was the second, because before that, I don't know if this was like right before that, but one of the lives I experienced, I was also dying in the desert, and I didn't want to experience that death. You're like, do you want to continue? And I was like, no, I don't want to feel
that
this
is so
again.
crazy now that you said that. Like you didn't want to experience that death.
No.
You moved on, but you had to experience another one.
To experience
I didn't
another
even
one.
connect that part.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And right? And so then I like felt that death in that process of, and this is where like my higher self was like, we so much fear the endings and deaths. And this is like super correlated to the other questions that I had, where she says, they're one and the same. They're the same. They're the same energy. Life and death are the same. And we try to avoid one or the other, or we fear one or the other more. But it's initially when you have a death, there is life. And so as soon as I died as the dolphin, my essence it was an immediate like, oh, a temporary pain of then I go up, and then I'm in one with this tree essence, and then I'm connected to all these other things. So it's kind of like, it just gives you such a different perspective of like what everything is around here, how much that you can actually be, and what we all actually are, and how we all are so connected into that, like those pain points. So there's things that we're feeling is so temporary in those feelings. And it's like, I had to go into the death. And then it correlated with remember one of my fun questions was like, what does the beetle mean to me? Because it came up.
The scarab.
Yeah, it came up to me when we were actually in retreat together in Panama, and I was in one of the yoga sessions, and I had was in like a yin yoga holding posture, and I couldn't figure out. There was swarms. It was terrifying. Swarms of beetles either coming out of me or coming to me. I couldn't figure out where they were going. And then that like reflected memories of nightmares I had as when I was a kid, that was reoccurring about beetles in my room and coming in through like the doors and the windows. And I was like, what does this beetle have to do with anything? And then she says, basically, the beetle is the warning about endings to prepare you so you're not so scared. And then I'm thinking, as I was listening to this, I'm like, oh my God, this is like the scene in have you seen Practical Magic? Maybe I lost you.
Hello. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
It lagged a couple times.
That's okay.
And I was like, oh shit, I hope that didn't record my voice talking over your story.
No, I didn't hear it. But have you seen Practical Magic?
I have not, and it's been
No?
like in my sphere. You would think I would have watched it.
Yeah.
Like
Okay, maybe this is
everybody
like
gets a
one of your
surprise
little
when I don't.
nudges of like watching
Yeah,
it.
right?
Yeah. Okay. Anyways, well, I won't totally ruin the thing, but there's the sign of the beetle in that movie when like the beetle comes, she freaks out because the beetle has meant death in that scene in the movie, and like that's like my
Oh.
through and through like favorite movie. It's Jamie and I's movie, like, you know, my sister and I. And I forgot about that scene, forgot about the movie. And then when I was like re-listening back about this beetle, I was like, oh my God, that also is in that movie of like a forewarning. It was like all these like connections for me was just like all these
It's
lights were
so
going off.
funny because like the answers, like when you hear it, you're like, well, that's so fucking obvious. Like, why couldn't I
Right.
see it?
And
But
like
like
right in front of me. Like, what? So
but you had
yeah,
to go
that
through a hypnosis and like Scarab's death, and like
literally,
you're going through
finally.
death endings and beginnings, like they're all the same energy. That's just man.
Yeah. Right. So, and it's funny that like I experienced so much like death and then rebirth within like the different areas of hypnosis. And then it's basically she was like, yeah, it's just a continuum. It's just it's you know, never ending really. You just get to enjoy
Yeah.
wherever you're at currently, and then yeah. So it's just a
Well, what
wild
do they
time.
say about energy? Like it can never be destroyed, right?
Yeah, it's just
We're energy.
mm-hmm. It's
Our
true.
energy's being recycled into different bodies over and over
Yeah,
again.
yeah.
And I love
But
that you had like the zoom out, you had the zooming out when you're the octopus tree, and you could, and now that we're zooming out again in this processing session, by the way, guys, we're processing her session. We haven't done a processing session. This is what post hypnosis looks like. We talk about what she went through, and we haven't done it yet,
you're
so we decided to do it in tandem in this
live.
podcast. But yeah,
You're
no,
seeing
we're
me in
zooming
real
out
time put
now.
things together.
Yes.
Like
Yes. So we're zooming out now, and you're seeing the whole bigger picture of your whole
yeah.
hypnosis. Like it speaks to like how we are in our conscious brains when when we're not in the hypnosis, when we're in our daily lives and we have those cycles of thoughts that keep us stuck in places. And it's really funny that we're talking about this now because I had a recent session, and it was funny because like everywhere my client was going through, she was always looking up in awe and in wonder. And then finally, there was this vase at the end. It was so random, a vase that, and she was trying to get it open. And it was the only time during her hypnosis session that she was like trying to make something happen. And she was looking down and not looking at the wonder that surrounded her. I was like, if that's not a message or sign or whatever
Whoa.
of how we get
Yeah.
into our moments in our brains and not see that when we do look around, I'm not downplaying the experiences of other people, but I am in a safe place. I am a person who is privileged to be in a place where I can be safe and dive into things like this. I'm very fortunate and lucky that what I consume in social media is not my reality.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. Oh, I really like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the other part that you had mentioned that might be helpful just to reflect on is like going back to the shadow parts. And then it was like she was saying, you know, the answers are in the parts that she's not really ready or has been willing to look at. And re-listening to that, I was like, shit, she's calling me
Oh,
out.
I want
But it
to
was
hear
like,
this part because I don't
you don't
know.
remember this? Oh.
No, I remember this part, but I was like, I didn't know what she was talking about.
Oh, yeah. Well, it was like all those parts where you just like, and you had mentioned, I wrote it down because I want to like look into it more of like parts work. And you're like, would that be helpful for her? And she was like, yeah, like dive into it. But it makes me also reflect back to like those different parts of us, even as humans in our subconscious, childhood experiences, all the things that we think we are and all the things that we think we're not, and then expanding out to the parts that are those different essences that feel like, oh, I'm connected to this animal, or I'm connected to this realm or this time period, or and it's not even that you have to really believe in past lives or believe in all this stuff. Most likely, if you're listening to this, you probably have at least some interest in it. But
Yeah.
if it's in the same, and I'm just feeling this into this now, where it's like, even if you don't have such an idea of like, oh, this is me, but like you're just drawn to it so much, like that's a part of you. So like bring that in and then explore that part of you too. So it's, I had a huge part of me that's been like connected to the 50s and other parts that I just places that I feel drawn. So it's interesting if we were to kind of collect all of those things and like maybe put them on a sheet and then just see where we're at and just explore those things on paper to be like, okay, who am I in relation to that? Or what are areas of that I don't want to really look at or haven't explored or haven't let myself be curious about? Or, you get an inkling, but you're not going there or whatnot. So I think that could be helpful to getting ourselves in this state where it feels more of like a whole experience, because then you're just feeling more of yourself in a way.
I
That was
think
an
the
interesting
more
piece.
I think the more that you look into the parts that you are not willing to look at, you actually become more whole. And I actually really love past lives. That's where, when I went into Akashic Records, I did a lot of diving in past lives. And if it weren't for that, I wouldn't have healed my father wound. Like, I'm like really in a
Yeah.
good place in
Oh,
relationship to my dad. And I was like,
that's
that's
amazing.
insane, because I didn't think that would ever happen.
Yeah.
With an apology too. I got an apology that I was never
Wow.
expecting. Like, I never
See?
thought that was in him.
Yeah, and that goes into like when you go into this healing and you think it's just yourself, but it is in okay, wait. I'll have to bring this one up too, because
Okay.
it was in this, because I took notes because I knew I was going to forget things. But anyways, I think that like in your specific healing, like that you did, then that has to reverberate back to him. So like, was that
Yes.
apology, before I
Yeah.
dive into my part, was that apology
I
like,
think
you said it wasn't
okay, you're
expected?
blurbing
Was
again.
he at all like working on things or like managing your relationship, or did it come out of the blue?
Can you say all of that again?
Oh
What were
yeah.
you
Damn. I hate that our connection's like this right now. Was your like apology from your dad, because you said it was like out of nowhere. I think that our healing reverberates back to the energy of them when they don't
Oh my
even
god.
realize it. So like
I
was he also working on things, or was it just like you just working on your shit and then he also shifted? Or
I love this, because even you had questions on like generational stuff, right? And we were going into like DNA with your
yes.
higher self, and it was really funny that she talked about all this stuff, because I think before we, like, in our consultation, I was talking about generational stuff. Like, the what's going on in the world right now is bringing up a lot of themes of like ancestry and generational trauma for me, and I love going into that when it comes to my coaching work, and how like trauma is passed through the DNA. And I realized when I was watching a creator, a Palestinian creator, and she's been like very active in like her
Mm-hmm.
voice in when it comes to what's going on with her people. And one of the first videos I've ever saw from her, and it was started in the beginning of the whole war, was that when I see my people dying, I feel it in my body. And that speaks to that
Fuck.
genetic connection we have to our relations. It could be our cousins and stuff like that. And I'm gonna go this direction, but recently I had a cousin passed away, and within the past 9 months, I had three relatives pass away. He was the third one. And my history is like, I'm a nurse. I was an ICU nurse for 10 years before recently I left bedside during the pandemic. And one day, like, I had something set me off. I had an argument with another nurse, and all of a sudden my trail of thoughts was, um, dude, your cousin just passed away. And you're like, dude, you just had 3 family members pass away in the past 9 months. And all of a sudden, it was like this wall and flood of energy just like came out of my body, and I was crying like crazy. And it was like, I logically understand that death and life are thing. I have a very honest and truthful relationship with death and endings because of the nature of my work for my 10-year career as a nurse. And it shocked me how I could feel that way when I wasn't even that close to my relatives. I didn't know them that well. And I think and that speaking to the genetic connection, when we heal ourselves, that really shows like the truth is in the feeling. Like home, and like when we're in outer space, we feel home. We know that what our logical mind tells us isn't true when we experience that in our bodies. And when in my healing journey, as I've healed, I noticed that my sister started coming on board and getting curious about our conversations of where I'm going. I didn't have to tell her anything. I just started talking. I was just being myself and talking about it because it was something that excited me and gave me a lot of joy. And I didn't have to force any information on her. And she comes to me now. Like, we actually gotten a lot of really close and started bonding over our experiences with our dad growing up, because in the patriarchal society that we've lived in, our experience with our father is that he was very hard on us because we were girls. And as she's healing, because she has a toddler. She's 2 years old. Like, her baby, that whole feminine experience of having a child, and then you want to do everything and sacrifice the whole world for them. And this included, well, my healing is so important right now because I don't want my son to feel the things I felt growing up. And that reverberated down that line, right? And I'm feeling the reverberations down my line. I have a son, and we're actually a lot more close and having more open conversations. And now, all of a sudden, I just like, life is just proving to me, because I am changing and healing, that other people around me can change and heal too when I put myself first, put my healing first, my self-love first. And then when one of my uncles died, and one of the second funeral, I was met in this situation where I'm sitting next to my father. I, at this point, had disowned him like 2 years ago. But 2 years ago, 3 years ago, actually. And I was like, I can't talk to you guys. Like, it was very toxic. And I was at a moment where I was like, I don't even, like, you're the only person in my life who talks to me this way. I'm not standing for it anymore. So I had to set that boundary, because communication is not a strong suit for either of us at that point. And then now I gone through the journey of what I needed to go through within myself, and I had already come to the point where I had forgiven him for myself, so I could let go of that anger I had for him, because I had a lot of like physical, mental health, like trauma from my dad. So I'm sitting next to him at this at the viewing, and I'm fine. I feel my nervous system feels good. I feel safe. I feel like I wouldn't have felt safe with sitting next to him in the past. I feel safe. I feel at peace. I'm here and being present in this moment. When you come to more self-love, you learn how to act with grace in the presence, I notice. And I'm just being there with everybody, being in this moment. I'm being next to my family. I'm just being. in such a sad moment in my family's history. And I'm sitting next to my dad, and all of a sudden he breaks down and cries. And
Mm.
he he puts his head on my shoulder and he's like whispering in my ear because he doesn't want to be too loud. He doesn't want to be like, he doesn't want everybody to know what's going, he's very private man. And he just said, "I'm sorry," like over and over and over and again. And he didn't even have to tell me what he was sorry for. I knew where it was coming from because we had such a terrible
Oh,
relationship.
yeah.
And it's, I don't really know how, I don't really have words for it. How do you get there? There's no how. It
Yeah.
happens. It unfolds the way it's supposed to. So, I don't know, I guess my story is let life surprise you. Take care of yourself first, love yourself first.
Mm.
Honor each part of you. And I love that you even mentioned parts work because I love parts work. I use it a lot in my coach. Sometimes I peek it into my hypnosis and with some of my clients. Um, for example, I had I had one client and she went into her childhood home, and a childhood home that was very scary in her hypnosis. So it's scary to her and her nervous system in that the higher brainwave states. So when you're in theta, she was in that childhood home, and I knew this place was scary for her because childhood was scary. And I was she's like, "I'm at home. There's nothing around. I see my mom, and she's just cooking my favorite spaghetti." And I was like, "How are you feeling right now?" And she's like, calm and at peace. And I
Mm.
love how I bring the nervous system aspect to it. I always bring the body back into it. I'm
Yeah.
embodiment coach. And then I allow her to explore. She wanted to explore the house. She goes to her childhood bedroom, and there are toys that she what did you want to do in this room? I question and guidance and curiosity. And she wanted to check out these toys that were hers, and she just started crying. She's like, "I don't
Mm.
know why, in my logical adult mind, why these toys make me feel so bad. I feel like it became like a and actually she was in her 4-year-old self. I think she became she was understanding that for some reason these toys, she only had a few of them and she wished she had more, and it was more of I never felt like I was safe to express my needs kind
Mm.
of thing. And I was like, is there anything you want to give your little girl, your inner child? And she ended up giving her a hug. And that's
Oh,
what parts work can look like when you give yourself that thing that your parents couldn't give you
yeah.
in this life.
That reparenting is very, I think, very powerful and
Mm-hmm.
not at all really. I think it's starting to become a little bit popular now, or at least it wasn't so much in my awareness at all until this last year, really, to yeah, give yourself what you need. It's okay to want things. And I didn't really know what parts worked actually what it really meant until I wrote it down and was researching it. And I was like, oh, I guess I've done versions of it, but I didn't know what it was called. And it's I've had this similar experience within my family line, and it kind of lets you believe into and realize that magic of that interconnectedness of each other and of our DNA and our generations and all these things, because it is so true. And when we do that healing work, and when we start to alter how we view things or even view situations, and view each other and view other people, they're able to then view themselves differently also. And they feel that, even though you don't have to say anything, they feel that. And I've had similar experiences like that with other people, and even in my family, where you're just like, you didn't realize like nothing was really done or said until like, and that's something that was brought up in I wrote down my higher self. And I think this is for many people in this that's doing this work right now, that are like the first people to notice things, or the first people to wake up in their family, or the first people to do healing work in themselves. I think that if you resonate with that aspect, you might resonate with this. My higher self, she says, I'm the space and time conduit for healing the line. And I was like, what does
Oh
even that
yeah. Oh my
mean?
god.
I'm like,
I totally forgot about that, but
right?
after this whole fucking conversation, that totally makes so much fucking
Yes.
sense.
And
I think
even
when
as,
we both heard it, we're like, what is she even talking about?
yeah, but that's literally what you're describing also, to like heal your
Mhm.
dad and heal now your sister. And that's going to further back heal in space time, because it's all happening now. Like none of it's, it's all coexisting. But how like that could feel with like, if you're listening, of like saying like, I am the space and time conduit for healing my line. And that was something where it was like, yeah, that was really powerful for me to hear back and forth, because that's even what I have felt even since I've been back to the States, and reconnecting to a lot of different family members that I hadn't connected to in years. And like, I have this like just innate want and need to like be in contact and be in relationship, and like reform relationships. And that in turn is just like healing so many other people that I probably, more so than we honestly even could probably know, like consciously. Like I think that we do more for people when we do our own work like that, than what we actually know is of what's affecting other people, because I think what we do is even more powerful than what we could understand. But yeah, that right there was something. And then also with the parts work, she had mentioned um feelings of not being worthy, um in your being, of like how I am in my being, because not all is here. So there's no way that you could possibly feel worthy for yourself or have this feeling of wholeness or worthiness, because you're not allowing all parts of yourself to be in one place in one time. So I think also with that parts
What was
work
that
of
last part
like
you said?
bringing in those parts of you in different aspects of like age or time, like I had said, even time period or what you're interested in, and all these things kind of help us like gather together the parts of us, and then it just kind of all heals each other all kind of together when you're dreaming your own stuff. It's
Can
kind of
you
a
like
great place to
mention?
land.
Can you say that last part?
Oh, the parts part. Fucking internet.
Actually, like
Okay.
it like blurbed like 3 or 4 times, and I was like, you know what? She has a lot to say. I'm just gonna
You
stand
let
back.
it chill. I know.
Yeah.
Sometimes it does that, and then you're like, okay, I can kind of piece together what she's saying. But yeah, just basically what we were like reiterating of like the parts work of, and honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, maybe this lag part of us repeating ourselves, maybe it's just something that needs to be repeated over for someone to
To
like
get
hear
it.
again. So in a different way, because I describe it in a different way when I'm retelling you what it is. And so
Oh
that's
yeah,
really
that's
interesting.
yeah. You
That's
do. You
interesting.
do
So
that.
yeah. But I'm just saying that like, so what my higher self, she was saying that like any parts of myself that I had felt not worthy of, because I was worried that like love and money, this main focus, because my focus was how to understand those were entangled for myself. And so my worry was that, is it because I don't feel worthy of those things? And I was working on my worthiness, and where those things come from, my inner shadow or inner soul. And she had said, it's not working, and you won't feel that worthiness and whole, because not all of you is here. And so you're disowning parts of you. So there's no way you can feel whole and worthy if you're disowning those parts. So you have to bring those parts in, no matter how crazy it sounds. Like maybe it's an alien, maybe it's in a different time period, maybe it's like an animal spirit, or all the things that resonate, I think, to you personally, of like, that's me. You know how sometimes you have these crazy things, like even a color, like color
Yeah.
pattern, like I'm like,
Oh
that's
yeah.
just so me. And like, and so if we put all those aspects together and you list them out all on a page, and you're like, okay, this is all parts of me, and then you're bringing them all together whole, then you get a bigger picture of like who you are collectively. And then you're like, okay,
Yes.
now where can I go from here, from this point? Then it's like,
Oh my
you
God.
know,
Anything is possible when
yeah,
you put all your parts together and they're
like Humpty Dumpty.
connected and they like, yeah, they look very Humpty Dumpty. but,
Just
like
kidding,
when
I'm
you
just
get them,
like,
that's
put
hilarious.
my arm together.
Like I imagine
Oh my
Humpty
God.
like
Yeah. Wow.
burst back onto the wall and came back together like in my brain. But yeah, when you bring all those parts, like I do it in visualization sometimes, like I'll have all my
Yeah.
parts together and they have like vague names because that's what actually I want to revisit this now that we're talking about it, but I gave them all like general vague names, but they're like names that resonated with me. So I have like an inner wizard and an inner
Oh,
goddess, my inner child, etc., etc. I have like a whole
yeah.
bunch of them, but I think one of the last breathworks that I did, I had them all like holding hands together in a circle, and they were all like loving on each other, and they were just like happy to be with me in breathwork. But it was really interesting because there was only one part that wasn't with everybody, and it was my inner wizard, and he was off to the side, and he was like this, like having his arms folded and like looking away from everybody, and I was like, what is going on, why are you all over there? And I think I don't know that I actually like really figured it out what that meant, but you know, you figure it out when you're supposed to. But eventually he came around once I accepted the side of me that is magical,
Mm.
that's mystical, that has indigenous mystical roots and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Like
Oof.
the part of
Yeah.
me that believes in the spirit and the unseen. So,
Dreamland.
yes.
Yeah. Dreamers. Yeah. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
so good. And I like that you just said like you name them, because I can already put names to a few different aspects of me that, like, even in like versions, what people used to call me when I was that age, or what I consider like more of authoritative, I could put to it, and like that would be really helpful to like put names to that. So I really like that part that you put that as specifically, because you can then work with them more in like the physical, like more, it feels like more, uh it gives it more like sturdiness, I guess, of like this concept
Tangible,
of you.
like,
Yeah, thank you, tangible, like
yeah.
something that like, oh, I'm like I want to grab it, like um sounds like,
No, but it's like,
but
it's really cool because when you know where a certain thought pattern is coming from, say you have
yeah,
like that judgy side of you that's coming through, like, you know, the different voices in your head, you just never
yes,
know where they're coming from. Well, maybe this is my inner teen talking. Well, what does she want to talk about? What does she want to say? What did her voice need to be expressed in this moment? Like, what about this moment's bothering her? And like
yeah,
coming to more um a symbiotic relationship with the different versions of yourself in your life, and like the different themes of who you are and all kinds of stuff. It gets lots of fun. Like all of this is like,
yeah.
you get scared of different pieces of you, but it's actually really fun when you get in there. Like,
Yeah, kind of like play. Like I'm even thinking now, like what
yes,
if I spent an hour, an afternoon with that part of myself, and I identify as that part, and then you get to play that out and be like, okay, what does that part of you need? Like, what do you want to say? What do you want to express? What do you want to dress like? What do you want to? And then you get to like try that on and then integrate that. That's like more of like that. That honestly feels like an embodiment piece of what like how you could like bring that into the physical of like what I'm just like thinking this out in my head. I was like, well, I've never really done that before. And that would be fun to be like,
Yeah.
okay, what's this aspect that I
I love
would
how
like
that
to,
little voice came in and was like, I've never done this before. You're like, you almost stopped yourself. Like, you know how that's how insidious these thoughts that limit us are? I was like, but it makes you wonder, where did that even fucking come from?
what, that I haven't done this before.
Yeah, that part of me, like,
that part where you're just like, oh, this is trippy. Yeah, this is something new. Where you're just like, huh, like, would this be weird? Yeah, but it gives that like, if you're struggling with one part of yourself, or if a part that is in the shadow that you can give a name, and then you can be like, okay, how can I bring you back out? How can I give you love? How can I spend time with you? Because that's ultimately what it is. It's like, and then that
or just even
merges
ask them,
into
what do
you.
you need?
What do you?
You know,
Yes,
like,
right.
what do you
So
need?
true.
Like, I think we don't, let's like, it's a fun and beautiful practice to do within yourself, because how often do we even do that to people in our
On the
waking
daily.
life, to our loved
Yeah.
ones? Do we ever ask them, what do you need? Like,
Yeah.
and listen to
Oh,
what they're saying, like, instead of anticipating what
right.
it is
Or
or doing
thinking,
what you
mhm,
think they need,
right.
and honoring what that is, that because that is their truth, and each part has
Yeah.
their own truth. So
So
cool.
true. Oh,
I love all
so
this.
cool. Oh, this has been wild. We've been nearly like an hour and a half talking about all this stuff. I love this.
I didn't even like include
Didn't
what we were
even,
talking about before we started.
I know, before we started the podcast. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Because you have like some congratulations in order of putting down your nursing hat and stepping.
Oh my gosh, yes.
You're like,
Yeah,
yeah.
yesterday I put in my, okay, the full moon is really weird. Let's just say that.
It did really
And
weird things to us. Okay,
it
don't
did
blame us.
really weird things. Well, I love this astrologer, and he says that astrology is meant to be experienced. So my experience yesterday was, I woke up at 4:30 in the morning, and my body felt like I felt like I was wearing the wrong things, like I needed to pull everything off. Like, I just felt very repelled in my energy and very exhausted, like on the edge of burnout, and like um very like, I was getting sniffly, like I felt like I was getting sick again. And this always happens when I overwork myself, and this is this is why I love embodiment. It's like, you get to understand where your energy doesn't want to go. And it apparently didn't want to go to my nursing job that I do have, or currently,
Uh,
as of yesterday, turned in my resignation letter.
woo
And I have
woo
like two, yep, yay.
to a fellow nurse. Yes, so
Yes.
proud of you. I can't like. If I could help every nurse quit their job, like we would be in a way worse spot for probably just in medically.
Yeah.
But like that would be awesome if more nurses quit their job. I would love that to happen.
There's a lot
Anyways, continue.
of dissonance. There's a lot of dissonance between
Yeah,
it's like mine. This will make this podcast like 1,000,000 hours longer, but I'm
we
just
can
gonna
have a
say
separate
real.
episode with talking about this because I think a lot of
Yes.
people feel this and have felt it and continue to feel it strong. And I think like the longer that our even different parts, when I come in and out, when I leave and then I come back and leave and I come back, when I come back every time, it's like more people are frustrated, more people are questioning, more people are like, this doesn't feel right. And it's like difficult for like the nurses. And then it's kind of like, it feels like it's like that friction in yourself of like when you say that you want something or you believe something to be true, but then you do something else that is the exact opposite. And then you get this friction within yourself of like, oh, I'm doing something. It's like that disconnect where you're actively not doing what you believe in, and it causes a lot of friction everywhere in your body, and
Oh my
in your
gosh.
mind and your being. And
It's
I'm
such
sure
an
that's
awful feeling.
it is.
Yeah.
Oh, it
And
is.
it
It's the
could be a
fucking
totally
worst.
different podcast episode. Like,
Yeah.
that's a long conversation, because it's
Yes.
not even like it doesn't affect nursing itself. It is the corporate environment. The medical system is a corporate environment, whether
Mm-hmm.
people understand that or
They're
not.
privately owned. They're
And
money
yeah,
based. Mm-hmm.
mm-hmm. And whenever it's money based and like it came from the patriarchy, the intention that they market is not the same. It's not the same. It's not connected. So whole other topic
We'll
though.
do it. We'll do another episode with that. I would love to dive into that. But yeah, new chapters we'll just wrap it up with that. Like new beautiful chapters. You're an amazing. I've experienced breath work with you. I mean, you could scroll back into the beginning episodes of the podcast and we talk about that. But your breath work is incredible. This quantum hypnosis is incredible. You hold such beautiful space for like the beginning questions, the processing, enduring. And I worked with a lot of people. I've had a lot of different sessions, and you hold such a very like neutral, warm, like loving space where like I felt very comfortable diving into like parts and aspects that like I was like, all right, let's go there. Let's figure it out. So you do this so naturally. And yeah, I just want to say thank you for that. And it's
Thank
wonderful
you.
for what you're doing. So if you're interested, quantum hypnosis, you have embodiment, breath work, and coaching all wrapped up in this amazing human. So thank you so much for being here.
For the
And
compliments.
yeah, I mean it deep down.
It really means a lot to me because this has been a 3-year journey of getting to this spot where I'm finally like choosing to be more public. I'm gonna be okay, so everybody knows I'm gonna be putting out a podcast and a Substack soon. If you follow my Instagram, then you can find it there in my link tree. But yeah, I'm really excited because like this could be another episode too, is my journey with my voice.
I'm just gonna jot these down. We're like definitely, and I resonate with that because nursing. Because honestly, well, we'll talk about this after I stop recording. But but yeah, I think that's probably something that a lot of people resonate with. I definitely resonate with finding your voice and finding like your groove or creating a new groove for yourself can be a struggle, and it can feel like I needed this to happen before, but it takes some time to do. And once you finally do it,
I even have past life ties to like the use of my voice.
Yeah,
those are fucking cool stories.
I
have a lot of cool stories.
Yeah. Okay. We'll dive into those in our next episodes. I feel like 2 is just not going to be it for us, but
I mean, we can talk forever.
Have more episodes to come. But yeah, thank you so much for being here. I'll include all of her information in the show notes where you can book and explore her stuff and think about having sessions and such. And is there anything else you want to like say or wrap up, or
no,
do you think we covered, or do you just want to
I'm just gonna say I just feel so much love right now. I really love and enjoy talking to you always. Like it's always been, you were like when we met in Panama, we had like the funnest conversations that just never ended, even though we had things to do. So I just feel a lot of joy right now. That's just all I want to end with. Share.
I received that, and I could say ditto. Like it's just real easy. Like and that's how you can feel into those like soul resonances of just like smart people. It's every time we chat. Yeah, I know. Awesome. All right, well, I'll put all of her information there. And thanks for listening. If you've gotten to the end of this, thank you so much for listening to the whole thing and the hour and a half of juicy goodness. And we'll see you in the next episode.